Hey, welcome to Life in the Leadership Lane. I'm your host, Bruce Waller, where I'm getting to talk to leaders that are making a difference in the workplace and in our community. What did they do to get started? And what are they doing to stay there, to stay in that leadership lane? And today, oh my goodness, I have a very special guest. Her name is Jane Atkinson. She is the president of Speaker Launcher, Inc. She's also the author of The Wealthy Speaker 2.0. and the new book, Scaling Your Speaking Business. And if that's not enough, she hosts the Wealthy Speaker podcast. And I am so excited to have you on the show today. Hey, Jane.
Thank you for having me, Bruce. I'm very excited to be on your show.
Well, you know, I'm a big fan of the Wealthy Speaker podcast. Of course, I've read your books, and I always like to reflect on, you know, many of the guests that I have on the show, I've met them or run into their path. And I was thinking about when I came across your path, and I think we may have met, but when I really, what I remember is someone referred your book, The Wealthy Speaker 2.0. And I remember reading that book and becoming a big fan. And then I found your podcast, and I've been a big fan of your podcast. You are out there helping people on the speaking circuit so much. And then, of course, now your new book, Scaling Your Speaking Business. So, man, this is a absolute honor to have you.
Well, thank you so much. That's a beautiful introduction. And yes, our goal is to help people who want to get paid to speak add zeros to their income.
Oh man, that sounds really good. You know, this is a big business leader audience, a lot of people in the HR community. So my hope today is that some of the people listening will maybe pick up a tip or a strategy to help them be a better speaker. Maybe not even on stage. Maybe it's just in the workplace. Maybe it's speaking to a group, their team members, or whatever the case may be. So really excited. Hey, one of the things I do like to do is start the show is I like to have our guests share a little bit about their organization. So Speaker Launcher, Inc. How do you serve your customers?
We have a plethora of offerings for our people at all levels. So for the emerging speaker, we have a school and a 100K club that they can join and be a part of an online course and a community where they can learn and grow their businesses. We have masterminds at a couple of different levels, and then we have private coaching. So I started out the business just as, you know, a coaching practice, but it's really evolved into much more than that.
Love that. Love that. One of the things I noticed on your LinkedIn profile as I was reading some of the information about you before we started, it's hard to see the label when you're in the jar. I love that. What do you mean by that?
Well, some things come so easily to us, and people struggle for 2 and 3 years trying to figure out, you know, what should my lane be? What topics should I be known for? And they show up on our doorstep and we say, well, what about this? And they're like, what? And that's the saying. It's hard to see the label when you're inside the jar. Sometimes you're too close to your business to be able to kind of rise up and give it that 10,000 foot view. And often we can see a much easier path for people. I think sometimes we get in our own ways.
Well, I want to dive into a little bit about your books, but before we start, I would love to hear the Jane Atkinson story. Like, where did you grow up? And I think you've lived in Dallas before. And how in the world did you get into the profession you're in, helping speakers?
Well, I popped around and lived all over the world, actually. So I live in Canada now, but I've lived in Texas for 6 years, lived in Australia for a year. But when I was in my mid-20s, I had a lot of really cool jobs. And I was the queen of kind of taking a job and really mastering it very quickly. I really absorbed quickly. And so I was on a temporary contract with 3M. And I stumbled across, but I was thinking, okay, I don't think the corporate life is for me. I don't think I want to climb the corporate ladder. I had been at 3M on and off several times over a couple of year span, and I thought, that's not for me. What do I want to do? And so I was unsure, and all of a sudden on I don't know, like a Sunday morning, I was watching our public broadcasting system on TV and I saw Les Brown
Mm.
Live Your Dreams speech. So here I am, 25. Number one, I don't know that there's such a thing as a motivational speaker. And I hadn't read a book since college. So it was like all of these ideas that Les Brown, I taped it on VHS. So that tells you how old it was. And I watched it over and over and over again. He talked about, shedding the friends in your life who weren't going to the places that you wanted to go. And I really was motivated by this presentation. So I said, that's it. I want to go and work for a motivational speaker. So I craft out this beautiful letter, send it down to Les Brown's office in Michigan, and I get back this order form for his products. And he and I, fast forward maybe 10 or 12 years later, have a nice little chuckle over that. But anyway, so I just, how you put things out to the universe. The next thing I know, I tell somebody at 3M, I want to work for a motivational speaker. And she says, oh, my best friend just left 3M. She was a vice president here and she's gone off to start her own motivational speaking company. She just wrote a book, da 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 da. Well, bing, bang, boom. Within probably weeks, I'm done at 3M, my contract, and I'm over working as a business manager for a motivational speaker. So I spent 3 years with Betska was her name. Then I got recruited out to Vancouver to 2 more years with another speaker, and then down to Dallas. And I actually spent 4 years working for that speaker and 2 years working for his wife who owned a speaker's bureau. And so that was the first 15 years of my career, and I learned so much from them.
Love that. I've listened to that speech by Les Brown at the Georgia Dome many, many, many times. It is so good. Well, let me ask you this. I mean, obviously you had some people that helped you along the way, right? I always like to ask my guests about mentors. Like, who has been some of the people that have helped you kind of navigate to where you are today? And what was it about him that made him a great mentor?
Well, certainly the 3 speakers that I represented. So Betska K. Burr was an incredible mentor. She was a leadership expert as well. And so I got to absorb her philosophies around leadership. And that was just really good things that I wouldn't use until much later in my career. And then Peter Legg, who I got recruited out into Vancouver, he was a magazine magnate. He had like a $25 million company. And so I went from Betska's basement office on straight commission to the corner office with Peter Legg and learning from someone who had 100 employees. Incredible. And talk about, learning leadership. He would, at one point we were on a renovation and I got moved not beside him anymore to way across to the other side of the company. And I could feel his energy just coming through. He was British and, he would yell out his commands to everyone. And as soon as he was done talking to them, he'd say, carry on. And then he'd come back and see me. And I said, Peter, the energy that you bring through this office, you need to do this all the time, because he was just this ball of energy. Very, very interesting. And then down in Dallas, I got a frontline experience of watching a company grow. Vince and myself, I worked for an Olympic athlete named Vince Pacenti, who you may know, and for 4 years kind of building his business. But while that was going on, there was a speakers bureau growing, and we went from like 3 of us and a dog in a cruddy little office, kind of in Nowheresville, in Dallas, and to build it out to like 35 staff. So that was an interesting learning experience, kind of seeing what all happens and as a business grows. So those were really great mentors, the first 3, but then since then I've hired coaches every year. I go to strategic coach Dan Sullivan, author of Who Not How, which is a great book that's just hit the market. And so I've been really, really lucky to continue my growth since then.
I love that. I will put a copy of the show notes of Dan Sullivan's book.
Yeah.
Isn't that so great though, to like look back and reflect on those times that have really, those are the things that have built us, right? But I'm curious about you, like, it seemed like you knew early on, but I always like to ask the question around, and we're going to talk about pick a lane, how you talked about it earlier, but I published a book called Find Your Lane
Yes.
several years ago.
Love it. Love
And
it. I think that's where we connected over maybe on Instagram or something. It's like, hey, wait a second, we need to hang out a little bit more, Bruce.
oh my goodness, you're right. And I was thinking about, was there a moment when you were going through all of this process, you're like, I found my lane, I found my calling, I found my purpose. Was there a moment?
Yes. The entering the business of speakers, professional speaking field was my first moment. Going to my very first convention in Washington, D.C., it was like, I found my people. 30 years ago, I met all of the people who would end up influencing my career going forward. So that was incredible. But I have to say, in terms of like purposeful lane, I don't know. I really felt like I was behind the scenes for a long time, pushing other people into the spotlight. And it was when I made the move to say, okay, it's my turn. Let me take my place center stage and be the person in the spotlight. That was a shift. I became a coach. I don't know that that was the moment when the shift happened. I think it was when I became an author. I thought, okay, now it's my own thought leadership that I'm putting out into the world. And I think I just wrote Scaling Your Speaking Business. That was my 5th book in the industry. So yeah, I think at some point, some of us who are used to being behind the scenes and pushing other people onto the stage and making them great, at some point we say, hey, okay, maybe I need to take my spot center stage now.
I love that. I love that. And a great segue, because I want to talk about one of your books, and I'm holding up, for those who are listening, I'm holding up the book Wealthy Speaker 2.0. And I'll put the notes in the show notes if you want to pick that up. Like I said, I've read it. I've listened to it on Audible. I love listening to you. And I want to dive into this, because I think there's a lot of people that are listening right now that are looking for ideas. I remember years ago, I was watching I think it was the Academy Awards, and Tom Hanks went up to get his award. And I remember he said, I'm going to share 3 things. And I don't remember what 2 of those things were. But what I do remember him saying was, one of the 3 was, we need to bring ideas to the workplace. And I was thinking, that is it. That's the value driver right there. Bring ideas. And so I think you're going to bring some ideas for this. I want to ask you why, so you stepped out, you took that leap of faith.
Yes.
You became an author. Why did you write the book? And then I have some questions about the book.
Well, I realized that I didn't have my process documented. And so, as you know, we have a process inside the Wealthy Speaker called Ready, Aim, Fire that really helps people. So when I was writing the book, I thought, well, how can I organize this in a meaningful way? Sure, I can write 20 chapters, but how can they be chunked out into a formula or a system? And I know that we really, as speakers, like 3s. So what are my 3 key ideas? So I did a big flip chart and Post-it notes, and I put ready, aim, fire across, and then I started writing out all the things I knew about how to launch and build a speaking business, and I started putting the Post-it notes in their places, and Ready, Aim, Fire was born. And to this day, Bruce, That's the structure that we follow inside the school, in our masterminds, in my coaching, it's informed everything that we do. And the first version of that book was written, I don't even know what year, but many, many moons ago. So 2.0 had to come out because of technology and so many changes. But I wouldn't be surprised if 3.0 comes out next year simply because so much has changed yet again.
So one of the things about the I love that process. So, and I love you describing how you came up with that mindset. Mindset is so important, isn't it? And that's in the ready, right? You got to get your mindset right. Talk about that.
It's so true. And I used to think that mindset was, maybe 50% of the game, something like that. Having gone through a certification this past year in a particular type of like thought model mindset process, I now believe mindset is 100% of it. If you boil it down to the idea that our thoughts equal our results, that's exactly what we're going to get. And so even coming back to, let's say we have a listener on the line who says, okay, it's my time to step into the spotlight. I'm going to be the one who's, moving out into this world. Really check in with what your primary thought is about that, because if it's your primary thought is something like nobody's going to listen or who's going to pay me or anything like that, we have to really check in on that and make sure that we shore up our mindset as job one.
Oh man, I love that. I absolutely love that. If you are listening right now, if you're driving, pull over, get out your pen, take some notes here. There is going to be
or give a speech.
Exactly
Side of the road.
Speaking of speech, one of the things in the book that I knew it was important, but it really reinforced the importance of that. And that was the speech, the importance of the speech, and really investing time on the speech. Talk a little bit about that, the importance of that.
We always say that there is no better form of marketing than a great speech. And the idea is that one speech turns into many speeches. Okay. So you get these side stage leads, as Michael Port calls them, where you're walking off the stage and somebody shakes your hand. Thank you so much. That was amazing. Here's my card. My people need to hear that as well. That's when you know that your speech has arrived. That's when you can kind of rest just for a moment, because you've made it. So when you have a lineup of people and you're getting on average 2 to 3 spin-off from every speaking engagement, that not only is it incredibly helpful for your trajectory, that's when you can kind of maybe back off on your attentiveness to just getting better. So the first year that you're in the business, you might spend a lot of time and energy and money really perfecting and creating what we call an epic speech.
Let me ask you, and I love how you frame that, what a good speech looks like. And a good speech is about referrals. Like, that was so great. We need to share that with more people. I absolutely love that. What are the, I want to ask you this. And by the way, I do some speaking myself. So I'm loving this, because I'm like, okay, I need to remember that.
I can see your wheels turning, Bruce.
So let me ask you this: what are and I gave you some questions, but I just want to kind of drive conversation here. What are some of the pitfalls, or some of the that you see for people that are trying to speak more, or trying to present? What are some of the pitfalls that you see?
Well, I would say it's really, really common to try to give too much. Okay, so think about it in terms of less is more. That key idea of threes is really, really helpful. If you can have 3 key points, and then, an opening story and a closing story that kind of wraps them up into a nice bow. You think, oh, I have to tell them this, I have to tell them that. But guess what? They don't know what they're missing. You don't. Okay, so less is more. A great keynote, we're talking the difference between keynotes and training right now.
Okay.
A great keynote really makes people think. Whereas a workshop or a training is like, let's roll up our sleeves and have people taking notes and notes and notes and notes. So your goal as a keynote speaker is to inspire action. So let's say you go and you see an amazing keynote on one of my clients. Her name is Shola Kay, and she's from the UK, and she is a diversity speaker. And so Shola might give her presentation, and you might walk away and think, yes, when I am at work, this is something I need to become more aware of. And I need, and now that I have these things of awareness, I might behave a little bit differently. It's like micro changes rather than like, oh, let me just take down, 15 pages of notes while watching a speaker.
I love that. And I appreciate you sharing the difference between a keynote and speaking in a training session. That is absolutely fantastic. Well, let me ask you this. Last 16, 18 months has been a little different, hasn't it? Have you seen the speaking business shift over the last year and a half?
Oh, yes, of course. And really, the first step for all of us was to check in on the mindset. Okay, so my initial mindset was, oh my gosh, my industry's been wiped out. Every one of my clients lost every date off their calendar at the beginning of March. And then I shifted my mindset to people need me now more than ever. And I helped my clients do the same because people did need them now more than ever. And people did need me now more than ever. And so once corporate started to catch up and go, okay, this is going to be a long time now. We can't sit still. We need to continue with our initiatives. We all made the pivot over to virtual. And now I think everybody recognizes that virtual can be incredibly impactful. So now as we go through the fourth wave, I remind my clients, hey, we've been here before. We know what to do. We can handle this. They've been there before. Our clients, corporate decision makers, they've been there before. They know what to do. We know that this, we probably will not go into as dire situation as we did originally. That says my smart economist friend, who is also a pandemic specialist. He assures me that we won't be going into lockdown again. We'll be moving from pandemic to endemic to flu. So knowing that this is just going to take time, that they know what they're doing and we know what we're doing, and virtual just keeps getting better and better and better. Now what we're doing is shifting out of fear and into opportunity. Because how can we serve our clients better while we're waiting for things to come back to live events? So we're in a situation right now where a lot of my clients are seeing postponements. And so while they're waiting to go and deliver those in whatever first quarter of 2022, how can we serve them? And so it's an opportunity to go in and be better, be more of service to their clients.
Yeah, I love that. I will tell you one of my favorite episodes. And by the way, if you're listening right now, be sure and plug in the Wealthy Speaker podcast. It is fantastic. And I do not remember what episode it was, but it was the episode where Ryan Estes came in and he talked about the virtual presentation. He talked about lights. He talked about engagement. He talked about chat, how he worked all these different, there was so much value there.
It took him a little while. He didn't get the mindset memo didn't catch up right at the first stages. And so he was waiting and seeing and watching and developing. And then all of a sudden, boom, the lights came on and he hit the scene virtually, and nothing will ever be the same in his business again as a result of that. So I'm hoping none of my clients will wait this time around.
Do you think virtual's here to stay, though? I mean, you mentioned from the pandemic to endemic to flu, and I mean, eventually you navigate through this. But do you think we'll see this here to stay?
Yes, and I think what we're seeing a lot of right now, this is just a pie in the sky prediction. We're seeing a lot of hybrid events right now. But what I recommend for hybrid events is that they have a host for both and they really need to produce them both separately. So what I think might happen in the future is that they do live events, in-person events, and then in between they do virtual events. Wait, let me say that again just to get it clear. They do in-person events, all produced with the person in the audience in mind, and then they do virtual events, all produced for the people watching at home. I think anybody who's tried to juggle hybrid recognizes that it's very hard to pay attention to both audiences to the degree that you really need to.
Interesting you share that. And by the way, the HR Southwest conference, one of the largest regional HR conferences in the country, is coming up, and we're doing a live the first week and a virtual the second week. And I like that. But I was thinking back. So in 2020, I spoke more than I've spoken in a year. I spoke 27 times. And what was interesting was one of my events, I felt like it was the most challenging. I just didn't feel good about it when I walked off. And of course, that's one of those where everybody shakes your hand and says, "Hey, great job." And nobody was referring me. I was trying to, I thought it was so cool. So they put all of the chats up on this big screen so I could see the chats, and I was engaging. There was probably 100 people online, and there was probably about 30 people in the audience.
Okay.
Right. Live audience. And when I walked away, though, here's what I felt like. I felt like I served the people that were online and I didn't serve the people in the audience.
Isn't that interesting? So you probably did the reverse of what is natural, I think, for people. And so I think the goal is to be working with the live audience at the same time. But honestly, I think a host, I wrote a LinkedIn article about why we need a host for both, and somebody to make sure that they're conveying to you, the speaker on the stage, "Hey, Bruce, we have a question from the at-home audience. And so I think that's where it can come in really, really handy, so that you can really focus on being in the room and being present and have somebody feeding you questions.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I mean, I've had it the other way too, where I felt like I served the live audience and didn't serve. But this particular presentation, the screen was so big. I was just so fascinated by, okay, everybody can see everybody chatting. We're all going to be. And
you were dazzled by the technology.
Oh my goodness.
I'm sure you were not alone. And the other thing is to remember that it's hard to get you really gauge how people are feeling when you can't physically see them. If you're only seeing the chat and not the humans, doing this or whatever it might be. So we've had to learn a whole new skill set. And I think because it's working so well, I think we're going to see it here to stay.
Yeah. Hey, I want to talk about something that we mentioned it earlier, but I want to take a little deeper dive here. And that is when the term pick a lane.
Yes.
I want to take a deeper dive into that. And what do you mean by pick a lane? And I know that one of the things you mentioned earlier about one of the pitfalls is people try to share too much. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I'll raise my hand there. I've been there trying to do that. But talk the importance of pick a lane and how that can help people.
Well, let's put yourself in a decision maker's shoes. You're choosing between two speakers. Speaker A speaks on, you look at their website and you see that they speak on leadership and team and communication and time management and culture. Okay, so they have a list of 5 things that they speak on, but you're looking for a leadership expert. Speaker B has written 4 books on leadership. Who are you going to choose? Right? So picking a lane means narrowing down your topic and your focus. And sometimes, Bruce, even niche. So it could be I'm a leadership expert in healthcare. Okay. Or in the coaching world that I've been exposed to lately, there was one coach who only worked with people on getting over breakups. Get over your ex in 3 months or less. It's like, what? I mean, how narrow is that? And so I've seen it in the coaching industry, and I feel like that some of that can cross over, because I think the more narrow you go, the more people can see that you're exactly what they need. And the reason for not doing that, the reason why a lot of people don't do that, is based on fear. But what if they come to my website and they don't see that culture talk that I have as my 5th talk? Well, it's okay, because you're a leadership expert. Just stick with what you know. Now, leadership, a lot of those that I mentioned, leadership, team, communication, they can all really blend together and mash up into one talk anyway. But what I'm speaking about is becoming known for one thing. And if you can identify it with one word, even better. One of my other clients, Jason O. Harris, trust. He's a former, I don't want to say which discipline, it could be Air Force pilot. And so trust. And, as I mentioned, Shola K, diversity, like getting really clear on and becoming associated with one word can be so incredibly helpful.
Speaking of one word, if you are listening, you cannot see this, but if you're watching the video, right behind Jane is a wall art that says coach. One word. I love that. Oh my gosh. Speaking of coach, you mentioned, you've been doing this for a long time, but yet you still get a coach. How important is it to, I don't know, seek out a coach or to have a coach or someone to help you?
Well, I know that a lot of people are kind of self-disciplined and self-driven, but remember that old adage we talked about earlier, hard to see the label when you're inside the jar.
Yeah.
I think that that's the biggest advantage of a coach. And getting a coach who is really tuned in to what it is that you need. Okay, so in the instance of me, okay, you want to learn how to accelerate your speaking business. I'm the coach that can help you do that. And I know that you can go out on YouTube and you can take some courses and some little freebies and do all kinds of things out there. But I think that when you put money into the game, when you have skin in the game, it can be incredibly helpful in terms of getting you focused and driving you forward if you choose the right one.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And coaches come in a variety of lanes, if you will. So you just got to find the one that works for you. Hey, I want to ask you. You mentioned earlier about website, and there, like I said, there's a lot of HR leaders here. There's a lot of business leaders that are listening. That they are representing their company, but yet they're being asked to go speak at a conference, right? Because of their company or their position or whatever they've done. How important is a personal website?
Well, if you're getting asked to speak for free to represent your company, I think your LinkedIn page represents you perfectly well.
Okay.
If you want to get paid as a speaker, that's the point where I think then you transition over to your own website.
Yeah.
And then what you're doing for the company becomes like a line item on your About Us page rather than the whole thing.
So if someone is out there and they're trying to get paid to speak and they put together a website, you got any tips on maybe a couple of things that someone might want to think about having on their website?
Yes, absolutely. One of the things that you want to do is make it about them and
Mm.
not you. Okay, so I come to your website. I want to see within like 10 seconds, probably less, 5 seconds, how you're going to help me solve my problem. So if I'm that leadership person looking for the leadership expert, and I'm thinking that what leaders need is, I don't know, better listening skills, then, and I come onto your website helping leaders listen better, boom, I found my person who, what I think is the problem. A lot of speakers, of course, are a little bit broader than that in terms of leadership. But even if you decide on a lane that's that broad, boil it down and share with me exactly how you're going to help me and my company.
Yeah, that's great advice. I appreciate you sharing that. Them, not you. Hey, I want to ask you, as we continue, I'm holding up another book that I have called Scaling Your Speaking Business. Talk a
Yes.
little bit about, okay, so why did you write this book, and what's this all about?
Well, this is just something that I'm going through in my own business, and I have learned so much about what to do and what not to do. So, one of the key ideas, for instance, is that without team, and you're all leaders listening to this podcast, so you understand this. Without team, it's going to be very difficult to reach your goals if you have big number goals. And so, I think we talk a lot about mindset. We talk about team. We talk about systems, creating
Mm,
systems in your business and funnels and sales funnels. Really choosing to do the things that you love and start to let go of the things that are taking up your time but not paying off in ways that you really want. There's so much to going from getting to the first 100K is where we concentrate our school, but up from that, the people who want to go to a 500,000 and 1 million and beyond in their speaking business annual income, that's where we're focused in the scaling book.
I love that. Systems. I got to tell you, that's probably one of the challenges that I've seen just throughout my career, just not necessarily even in speaking, just just being a business leader, trying
Yes.
to make sure you have those systems in place. And it doesn't just happen overnight, does it? I mean, it takes a while, a lot of trial and error and failure along the way, right? What
Oh,
do you
for
think? Is
sure.
failure important?
I just had a call with my team leader this morning, and we're grappling with another failure. Of course, failure is just a huge part of it, but I have a saying that you can write this down if you like. If you're not willing to fail, you're not ready to scale,
Whoa.
because it's all about risk. It's all about risk. You need to stick your neck out. You need to invest. You need to, in order to grow, there's always like these growing pains. So if you're not willing to fail, you're not willing to scale. And I just think it's ironic we're having this call today because, we're in the middle of something where it's like, okay, well, that didn't work, what we just tried. And so let's regroup, let's figure it out, and let's go back. And one of the things I want to come back to in terms of in terms of systems, Bruce, is consistency.
Oh,
We
okay.
have been doing the same things now. I think, being a voice in the industry of kind of calm and reason, especially in turbulent times, we have been that voice of reason now for probably 18 years. And so, consistency, choosing how often do you want to do your podcast? How often do you want to do your newsletter or blog? How often are you going to do this? Like, really mapping out your editorial calendar and really being committed to it and to doing it on a consistent basis. I think we miss 1 or 2 weeks a year with our podcast releases every Thursday at 1 o'clock Eastern time. And we do, I think we're down to like 3 out of 4 weeks of the month, we will put some sort of tip in your in basket. So consistency is a huge part of systems in terms of making your clients feel comfortable that you're going to show up on a regular basis to their in baskets.
I appreciate you sharing that because I'm in agreement with you. I think consistency is the key. If you say, "Hey, I'm going to do this every day," you need to do it every day. But it doesn't have to be every day. If you say every week, you just need to do it every week. Whatever you decide, what works for
Yeah.
you, right?
And you're the boss. You're in charge of building the business that's perfect for you. So if you want to do it once a month, that's fine. Just stick to it once a month.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Man, this is so good. Oh my gosh, I got so many questions. I want to ask you personally, what drives you?
Hmm. There's a lot of things. I love seeing people have success and hit traction. I think the evolution of someone saying, okay, I'm getting ready to, my job is really cool if I go off and do some speaking on my vacation days. Awesome. And then a few years later, okay, I'm getting ready to wind down from my job and now I'm going full time. And now they have a calendar and now their family can get involved and they can go and travel to these fun places with them. I have some clients who take one child with them on a trip every year for each of the three children. And like now an entire family is being the course of their lives are changing because you're basically building a business that's of your dreams. And so living the dream has become a hashtag that I've been using a lot lately on Instagram because I feel as though just kind of settling into that gratitude that, hey, don't always be thinking about what's next and what's out into the future. Just be like, really recognize what's going on today.
I love that. I think I saw a picture of some gratitude. I think you were sitting out by a dock and a boat, and it was just like, oh man, that just looks so cool.
At the lake, that's our morning routine at the lake is the water is like dead still. And so I might hop on the paddle board and go out for a paddle, come back. We have a coffee together at the end of the dock. The dog's sitting there beside us. I mean, it's just so peaceful and incredible. The loon might be calling. It really is literally living the dream.
I love that. Hey, I got one more question before we pivot. And the question is around charging fees. I know this comes out often.
Talking about money.
You're like, how do I know what to charge? Like, how do people know what to charge? You got any like general ideas on like baseline?
Of course. So we say in the Wealthy Speaker 2.0 that at $1,500 a speech, you're kind of in the game. You're a professional. And honestly, that's an incredibly arbitrary number. But at $1,500, you're in the game. But if we had somebody who was coming out of a big job, we might start them at 10K. So somewhere in that range, 1,500 to 10K, probably is going to be your starting point. And I would say that the best way to go about it is I would err on the side of going too little because you can always go up. It's much harder if you started at 5K and then realized it was a little bit high, you'd have to go backwards. And we don't like to go backwards. So that's kind of the range. If you're coming out and you've given lots of professional speeches and you feel really, really steeped in your content, you might come out of the gate at 5K. And then kind of go on up from there. Okay, I'm settling in pretty good. Not getting a lot of price resistance at 5K. Let me go on up to 7,500 because we should be feeling a little bit of resistance. A little bit. If you're not getting any, you're too cheap. Move your fee up.
Love that. I love that. Start out low and you can go up. Don't start out too high. 5,000. Wait, you're not going to pick me? Okay, 1,500 then.
Well, I'll tell you what, sometimes perceptions becomes a problem. So I have one of my best friends in the industry works for a big production company, massive, massive budgets, and she's always got like $25,000 for her speaker. And so she'll ask me. A lot of people actually ask me, "Do you have anybody who fits the bill for this and this?" And so I'll give her people, and oftentimes um, it'll be okay. That person would have been a great fit, but their fee is too low. And so that client may not even consider because they're too low. So it's very interesting to note that there are fees out there of 25, 30, $40,000 per speech. And this is the wacky profession that we are in.
Yeah, I mean, hey, pick a lane and go with it, right? I mean, you even see that in like even the business world. Someone that has a lot of experience applying for a job, when someone says, "Hey, you've got too much experience," or "No, you don't have enough experience." So kind of, you just have to go through the. Sometimes you just got to go through the experience, right?
Yes, yes. And start at a number and just go and go fearlessly.
Love it. Oh my gosh, this has been so great. I am going to put the Wealthy Speaker 2.0 and scaling your speaking business in the show notes so people will be able to click onto those. I want to ask you a few more questions. One of the questions I always like to ask is around leading you. I would love to know, how do you lead Jane? Is there something you do every day? Do you have a daily practice that helps you keep on track?
I actually wrote a book called The Wealthy Speaker Daily Success Planner and Journal. It's under my Yeti mic, so I'm not going to dig it out to show you, but I write in my journal every morning. A part of that is gratitude and getting focused on what outcomes I want for the day. I also write my long-term goals down every single day. And I have something that brings me that kind of balance. So it might be yoga, it might be the paddle on the board, something like that that just kind of brings me back to center. And when I miss, Bruce, I have to tell you, I feel just like slightly untethered. And if I miss for a week or two, it's like, whoa, let's bring it back into balance and get my morning routine. I like to listen or read something that is educational during that little time frame. And then my day starts and it goes from there.
I love that. I've shared this with others that yeah, I work out each day, and the days I don't, I miss. I feel like, oh my gosh, I just don't feel right at all. Untethered. Isn't that amazing?
It's so, they say that there's something about actually just going and standing in the grass and like literally being grounded. There is something to that that just brings you kind of back to center. So I've actually had clients, who were in the throes of feeling really awful about whatever financial or something like that. And it's like, okay, go outside and stand in the grass and just, that's not my only advice, but it's just a little piece of something that might help.
I love that. I love that. Okay. I'm going to ask you one last question before we shift here. And that is, if there was one piece of advice that you received, I don't know, you received it earlier in your career, or, I mean, you've given a lot of good stuff today, but somebody listening right now says, "Hey, I want to become a speaker." What's some advice you might give them?
I think it might be about showing up just completely and fully and authentically you. You've been and you've seen the Les Browns of the world and the Simon Sinek's and all of these people. And what we need to do is, take ideas from that and, oh yeah, that's neat. Okay. I see how they told that story. Okay. But then show up as the best version of yourself to give that. I think maybe not worrying about trying to be like anybody else, but just the best version of you.
Man, that is so good. Well, I'm going to shift to it's time to accelerate. I just want to ask you just a few questions. First question I want to ask you is like, what energizes you?
What energizes me? I would say that it's like clients who have a thirst for knowledge, but then go and apply it. They take action after they learn whatever I had to teach them. That energizes me. I get very, very jazzed when somebody is actually adding zeros to their income.
Oh, love, love, love that. How about you mentioned reading books, and we'll put some of the show notes and podcasts. What would you rather do? Read a book or listen to podcasts?
I'm definitely a listener girl. And so I'm in the car. So why not take advantage of that time? So books on tape, Audible, or podcasts. I have some podcasts that I'm pretty religiously listening to every week.
Yeah, that's awesome. Any favorites in particular?
Well, I love the Life Coach School, Brooke Casillo's podcast that's available to the public. It's all about the mindset piece. And so I think if you can control your thoughts, that sounds a little weird, but I think if you have some awareness around them, then you can really, truly be unstoppable. So that's the podcast that I tend to listen to every week.
Love that. Thoughts equal results. Thoughts equal results. You said that earlier. That's fantastic. Hey,
Yes.
I want to ask you, I got two more questions I want to ask as we wrap up here. The first question I want to ask is what do you like? What are you most grateful for?
Well, just this last weekend, we were out on the lake with my 14-year-old grandson, and he was learning how to wakeboard off of the back of the Sea-Doo. And this was the moment, like we've been waiting for all the kids. So he's the oldest at 14. We also have a 1-month-old. So they range everything in between, and 6 grandchildren. And just seeing the kids out there on the lake, like that to me is just gratitude at its peak. Love, love, love to be able to see them try out new things and accelerate with something, 3 tries and he's up, and then he's got it mastered, and then the 4th try he's doing tricks and what? It's just so fun. It's just so fun to be able to see them be really happy in their lives. So that's what I'm grateful for, is that we can contribute to that happiness.
And I love that. I can feel your gratitude through the virtual screen here. Okay, this is my last question, probably my favorite question of all. And Jane, 10 years older, is around the corner knocking at your door, and you're going to go answer that door. What is she going to tell you?
I think it's going to be something about not comparing, others' year 20 to your year 2. Let's not play the comparison game. It really doesn't serve you very well. It really doesn't get you anywhere. And I think if we just kind of remove it from our life, we'll be much, much happier in the future.
Man, that is so good. Oh my gosh. Comparison is the thief of joy, isn't it?
Yes, it really is.
Oh my goodness. This has been so wonderful. I admire your leadership. And of course, I'm a big fan. And I appreciate you coming on the show today and just sharing wisdom and perspective. Okay, so tell the listeners, or share with the listeners, how would be the best way to, learn more about you and your organization? How could they connect with you?
The main website that we have is called speakerlauncher.com. And they can come in, sign up for anything that we do. We'll get you out the newsletter every Tuesday and let you know what's going on over here. But if somebody's really thinking like, okay, I need a little bit of hand holding to make a decision at that point, they can just email me, jane@speakerlauncher.com, and we'll set up a chat.
I will put that in the show notes. Oh my gosh. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you coming on. You're definitely driving in the leadership lane, helping people make a difference. And I appreciate you and your leadership and all that you do. And so much for coming on the show, Jane.
Thanks for doing your good work out there, Bruce. I appreciate you too.
You're welcome. I cannot wait to share this podcast and continue to follow you and get better as a speaker myself.
Awesome.